name's Ellie, and this evening I will be your representative from Man vs. the Machine. So, in case anybody isn't familiar with our work, basically we're a design and motion branding studio. We have offices here in Haggerston, just over the road, and also in Los Angeles, going on 2 years. We say design and motion in that order intentionally, because as far into the wilds of crazy Houdini technology and hyper photorealism as we might go, we always hew back to fundamental attention paid to design principles, and we don't believe that the two are mutually exclusive, motion and design. That's the last 10 years in 10 seconds, in case you're curious. I'm going to talk today about Nike, specifically our work with Air Max Day. But just to give you a bit of context, we do a hell of a lot with Nike. We've been working with them since we were 3 years old, and so over the last 7 years, I don't even know how many campaigns we might have produced. It's probably a lot. And here's some of the work over the last 7 years or so. And we work into global sportswear, running, global football, skateboarding. We've done a few projects for golf, young athletes, global brand design. And our process with Nike is always very collaborative. You know, we get briefed super early on, and we help do R&D and creative development work to get an idea ready for internal sign-off before it goes even into production. So I suppose it's as if you think that, you know, Nike has an internal agency that we work into, so we have creative directors there that we're really familiar with, and they know our process and know our work. Today I'm going to talk to you about Air Max Day, because this is our third year, 2017, with Air Max Day, and it's the third year that Air Max Day has ever existed. In 2015, we launched the first Air Max Day, the one before the one. The Air Max 1 came out in 1987. Obviously, hugely revolutionary in the sneaker design world. And for the first Air Max Day in 2015, we went back into Tinker Hatfield's studio and delved into the design heritage of the Air Max 1, going back in time, sort of looking at all of the Air Maxes that had come in the interim, and eventually landing on the Air Max 0, the one before the one. So this is the launch film for the first Air Max Day. So that's the work that, you can't clap for every video, we'll be here all night. So that's the first piece that we did for Air Max Day, going back to the 0, and obviously we couldn't help but take a crack at the Air Max logo, the bubble type. So this is a vignette. So that's how you sort of see the origins, the germ of this relationship with us and Nike as regards Air Max Day. And of course, with all our Nike campaigns, we have to think about what's going to happen in terms of Nike towns, retail, out of home, everything else when we begin the project. It's a part of our pipeline now, setting art direction that then is created in real 3D space, using whatever OBJs or assets for production that we've created, and we determine sort of how those might be put into play in the physical retail space. 2016, since 2015 was successful, as is the nature, they wanted us to really up the ante and deliver suites of films and assets to go along with 3 new sneaker releases instead of just the one. So each of the seminal Nike designers, Hiroshi Fujiwara, Mark Parker, and Tinker Hatfield, all of them designed a new sneaker. And we created films to launch each of those. And these are sort of like a glimpse into the fantasy factory of the designer's mind. So this is Hiroshi's. And again, updating the Air Max logo and the bubble type that we'd created the first time round was a super priority for us. So this is the new version of Air Max Day logo that came out in 2016. And yet again, obviously, huge outputs in terms of what is physically required for the Nike towns globally, what they need for out of home. All of that kind of goes into the mix these days. And this campaign, I suppose, is the classic sort of man versus machine Nike partnership. Gorgeous textures, super glossy pacing that allows you to luxuriate in them. That had always kind of, or for a long time, had been our Nike vibe. So 2017 comes along, and suddenly there's even more ambition, which I don't know why anyone would be surprised at this point, but we needed to launch 7 new Air Max trainers. So Nike planned to drop all of these on a staggered release schedule leading up to Air Max Day in March of 2017. So a vast number of deliverables. Probably safe to say at this point I'm going to go over my time limit, so I won't be offended if you have to go catch a dinner reservation or something. This is a slide, actually, from the original brief that Nike sent to us. So the idea was, let's tap into the OG release, and this original film, which was so important to the sort of Nike ideology. And there's the Beatles track, Revolution, obviously. So the original idea was, let's make a suite of live-action films with, VFX and 3D interpolations of the new vibe, but kind of also incorporating this super revolutionary appeal. And we were really excited about that. Bear in mind, this is like spring, summer 2016. And the idea of being able to get, for each sneaker you have maybe a Daft Punk remixing the Beatles, or you have, whoever they could get an FK Twigs. Like, they had all these amazing ideas. And we were fully on board with that, did a bunch of director's treatments, worked into it really hard. And here you have another slide from our original Nike brief. This is one of our original mood boards. So as you can see, there's some pretty on-the-nose revolutionary imagery in the spring, summer of 2016 that shit got a little too real in the autumn of 2016. And the direction for the films, remixing Revolution, Rebellion, In the Streets, blah, 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 all of that has to obviously get canned, because if you pursue that line, then you end up with a Kendall Jenner Pepsi ad. So the guys at Nike are fully aware of this and dialed it right back. And we thought, you know what, the original vision that we had for the art direction of these living stills that we were going to produce alongside, that art direction is capacious, it's generous enough to incorporate and build out into actual films. So we don't really need any of this gritty reality necessarily. We can talk about the revolution that Nike has affected in design without leaning too heavily into that arena. So we decided to focus on the remix of the Air Max heritage and push that out into all of the AV pieces that we needed to create. So, you know, you come back to the graphic forms that are available to us in all of the Air Max heritage and on the trainers themselves. And there's an insane amount of heritage to mine. I mean, none of these decisions that go into the design of a Nike trainer are taken lightly. Like, it's all coming from somewhere. So we had this huge, amazing history, you know, and we go, right, we're gonna pair bold graphics with our heritage photography. We'll take in all of the Air Max's past. The imagery will be able to vary from product to product, you know, taking in, everybody gets each trainer gets its own respective color palette, texture, patterns, you know, and we can have overarching thematics on the collection. So even though we maintain this kind of like fists in the air, and as you can see, we're not cavalier about how the grip, even on the sneaker, is decided. Everything is pretty well thought out. You know, even though the grip on the sneaker is always still in a raised hand and sort of referencing the spirit of the revolution that Nike kind of wanted from the beginning, the position of each hand stays consistent, but the styling can really vary from shoe to shoe, from history to history. And from the get-go, we were pushing way out our stylistic comfort zones. I mean, if you're familiar with ManvsMachine, you don't necessarily see this illustrative 2D style. But obviously that's an incredible opportunity for us. So I'm just gonna power through a shitload of the first development work, just initial explorations that we did on the brief. You know, there's a lot of stuff about fauna, real animal skin textures, greenery, a lot of leaves and vines, natural terrains, deserts, foliage, dunes, grass, dirt, camouflage as forms, as patterns. There's a huge amount that we could draw on that already had formed the basis for the design of these trainers in the first place. So when it comes to, you know, incorporating stone slabs, geodes, crystals, whatever. And then of course we have the variation in the hand models as well. Like, are they, you know, covered in 3D patterns? Are they, you know, obviously we need varying genders, ages, races, get it all into the mix. So when you're starting to talk about, you know, the remix of Nike Air Max as a concept, you have a really fecund territory in which to get started. And granted, like this, and I suppose in the final product, it does seem a little bit like a bit of a visual overload, but we embraced it and really relished in being able to show our range. Because, you know, whilst we're known for our style and we love being known for our incredible 3D style, and of course people come to us for great executions in that style, we don't always get the opportunity to do this sort of work. But we have indescribable talents in-house who are incredible with 2D and illustration and everything else. So it was a really nice opportunity to flex our muscles in that regard. And it's a great theme at the moment, this eclecticism. It's kind of, you know, and it's starting to emerge as something that speaks to a lot of people, and I think that's kind of a facet of the deluge of the information that we live with nowadays. And the quantity, you know, the amount that we had to actually put out, it was a mixed blessing for us. It's great that we're allowed to stretch. I mean, our own directors were even shocked at the amount that we outputted during this phase. It was organizationally crazy, you know, to make up for the loss of all these other films that we had kind of planned out and worked through. There are huge teams working in almost like what I would call a creative telepathy organized around our dailies. So our dailies folder is probably the unsung hero of Air Max Day 17 in a way, because it allows everybody in the team to dig in, see what their counterparts are doing, and rather than have a 20-minute conversation or build out new storyboards, you just work right into whatever needs doing. And there's no room if something doesn't work. You know, in this instance, we managed to flip a coin, and it landed on its edge, so we were lucky. But at the end of the day, the end product and the process are linked. You know, they're both about creative chaos. It's about tapping into that ability to drag every, you know, reference and historical period in Air Max into the scene with us and make it work. So, granted, it's not rebellion, it's not gas masks and overturned police cars, but there is a chaotic, rebellious spirit in terms of the art direction. And, you know, Nike aren't a literal brand anyway, that's not really their ethos. So it works in the context of Air Max, says me. But here is next a dev reel to show you kind of the processes that take place behind the scenes. So you got a really nice glimpse into some of the pattern work that we did there, but I want to pause a moment on patterns specifically, because from a technical standpoint, what we did here was super interesting. We used Houdini for the 2D. You'll see a lot more of this now. It's a bit of a trend emerging, we think. And once we determined what we wanted, we were able to build a script to determine, you know, where does it go crazy, where does it not. So we built these 2D patterns with Houdini, then exported them back as a 2D pattern to bring it into our 3D environment as an accent. And I don't know, I find this very engrossing stuff. I don't know about you. Watch that whole thing. So then it just adds to our palette of what we're able to bring to the table and have kind of automated within parameters to achieve the goals that we wanted. And obviously, typography is a big part of what we do for Air Max and Air Max Day. Every year we build out the bubble type logo and we animate it and we make it better and more beautiful. But this year we had the opportunity to build out the entire font, which was super amazing. Everything that goes alongside Air Max Day has to be done in Futura, so that was the base. But these letter forms, because they have to exist in 2D, in 3D, they have to live inside of this super chaotic and complicated design world, we had to really strip back the letter forms and make sure that they were able to be covered in patterns and textures, they were able to be covered in different lighting surfaces, and yet they were still going to be legible. And the typography process that we have normally is super organic anyway. You know, it's trial and error to see what looks good, running alongside whoever is developing, the teams that are developing the films and the stills. But the collaborative approach in this way, I think, and the compressed timeline, allowed us to, again, iterate super quickly in a way that ManvsMachine is not necessarily known for. And let's see, here is a type reel that's sort of like a type animation vignette like in previous years, but with the new letter forms. So, you know, having the full set of characters meant that we could start pushing the Air Max Day font into different environments, and also it becomes sort of a recursive thread that allows you to recognize, you know, whether we're saying Nike Air is not a shoe, whether we're saying Kiss My Airs, or whether we're saying Air Max Day. You get this visual through line, which was really nice. The final films. I wouldn't dare show you them all. That'd be crazy. But here's a few, just to give you a sense of the range. So each of the 7 sneakers that we built films for got their own graphic world, their own visual language. And this is the remix that just mashes them all together and I think really encompasses the spirit of chaos that was alive in the studio at the time. So that's Air Max Day 2017 in a bit of a nutshell, but you know, it never stops with the AVs, it never stops with the stills. We always have to consider what's happening and where we need to be in the real world. So again, Nike Towns, out of home, everything else. And that's all as per usual, but what is not as per usual is when we get to have our work presented onto the Centre Pompidou in Paris, which this is one of the original inspiration pieces for the creation of the Air Max in the first place, you know. It's the insides on the outsides, and really important that, sorry, we were able to project onto that with the help of Unit 9 and also obviously a number of other designers who are working into different departments at Nike, you know, sportswear. And I suppose, you know, learnings from this campaign are that there's a way to do things that's a little bit more mashed up and quicker. Like, we were really surprised at ourselves even how much we could achieve in the time that we had once the original AV concept had been canned. And I wouldn't dare leave you without shouting out our audio partners on this, Zelig. Like, the turnaround times that those guys had to deal with were absolutely insane. They were working across 7 films. And we always say that, you know, audio can elevate a visual, but it doesn't really work the other way around. So, big impressive what Zelig managed to do in the time. Finally, we have a little, hang on, treat for someone. We make these posters from time to time to give away to our Nike clients as like, thank you for being the best clients in the world, patrons of our particular art. And I have a couple of extras with me here. We did a limited run of these. There were only 100. And there was enough that I was allowed to bring 2 here today. So if Andrea Delana and Chloe Alexander could come find me after, then you can pick up your Air Max Day 17 limited edition print. And that's it for me.